I'm Katie Wethman with the My Move DMV team, and I'm joined by our team member, Bridget Hodge today. We wanted to talk a little bit about what happens when you need to sell a house as part of a divorce. We've had this happen a number of times in recent years and over the years that we've been in business, and we get a lot of the same questions over and over. So let me start off by saying, big picture, a lot of times people come to us right off the bat and want to know, well, can I just keep the house? How do I buy out my spouse? And of course, that is a possibility. It's a little more complicated than a lot of people think because you do need to get a current valuation of the house. Sometimes that involves an appraisal. Sometimes it might involve a valuation by a realtor team like ourselves, but you need to agree on the valuation, and then you can come up with those funds in a number of ways. One, the easiest way would actually be to refinance the house. You do want to get your partner's name off of that loan. So that is something to consider. Another way to do it would be to rearrange the division of the assets to make that person whole. So there are lots of ways to do that. Really, your divorce attorneys are the best people to address that question with, but just know that it is possible to buy out your spouse. Now, financially, that's not always an option for people, and sometimes people just prefer to sell it. Let's turn to that scenario. People that approach us, they're ready to sell. So first things first, how does the process usually start?
There's usually three different parts. The first phase is that you've decided you're getting divorced and you need to figure out the valuation of the house. Usually this is before the divorce attorneys determine the MSA or the marital separation agreement, which dictates how much of the proceeds will go to each party. So that's really the second phase of when the attorneys are working through the MSA. And then once that's finalized, then the property can be listed for sale. And then you can go through the process of selling, and then proceeds can be distributed according to the MSA. So there's really three parts. Again, the first is just the initial evaluation and then getting the MSA finalized. And then the third is actually going on the market, selling the property, and then having the proceeds distributed.
So while we're happy to meet with people during that process, we really aren't in a position to take any serious actions until that MSA is finalized.
Correct. The timing will depend based on your circumstance, but the initial valuation, we can provide that really easily. We can provide a market analysis of the current valuation of your home so that the attorneys can review that and finalize the MSA. But at that point, it's really kind of up to the attorneys and your MSA to when the property is going to be listed and then actually sold.
And those are laid out. That's a negotiation between the attorneys, right? About the on-market date. And then in the event it doesn't sell, what is the schedule for price drops? How big are they going to be? So there are a lot of decisions made up front in that MSA, which makes it easier down the road. Pretty unique about the process of working with someone who's divorcing. The timing, agreeing in advance, and also which offers are acceptable if it needs to be within a certain percentage of the list price, for example, so that one party can't hold the other party hostage. Makes it a little easier going forward. So that MSA is really an important step. Now, what about logistics? What does that look like if they've both moved out? It's pretty straightforward. What if one person is still living in the home?
We dealt with that situation recently where one party was still living in the home, the other party was out of the property. And what we had to do is figure out exactly what was needed to be done to prepare the property for sale. We agreed upon what was to be done and then how that's going to be paid for. That's usually included in the MSA agreement. And then we proceed forward with the market preparation, if there's any staging, cleaning, landscaping, etc. And then we also figure out a timeline for actually going on the market, what that's going to look like. And if the person who's still in the property is going to remain there during showings or if they're going to vacate for showings. But having the property available to show is critical to getting the best price in the least amount of time. So that's beneficial for both parties.
And when there's updates that we recommend and that the parties agree to do, so say painting, repairs, updates, even the cost of staging, we do have options for that, right? Because not all parties are in the fortunate position to just have cash to split these upfront costs. What are some of the options you've seen our clients do over the years?
First of all, if you have the financial means, paying for it up front is going to be the cheapest. And so that's usually the first option. The second option is we have relationships and companies that can do the work and then actually defer payment until settlement. That would be listed on the closing statement as just a payable so that no upfront money needs to go out, and then that can just be paid from the proceeds. And then according to the MSA, that's how the costs are going to be split.
So there is a little bit of a premium to defer those payments, as you would expect, but logistically it makes it a lot easier to just have it deducted from the proceeds at the end.
Exactly.
They've made the updates, whether someone's living in the property or not. The actual listing process, pretty similar to any other listing that we have in terms of showings, open houses, things like that.
I would say the only difference is just making sure both parties are fully aware of what's happening. And as part of the MSA, there might be a stipulation of, all parties are to be copied on an email, or all parties are going to be participating on phone calls or phone conferences is or in-person meetings. So that's one additional thing to think about as far as the MSA and what that entails. But the logistics are very similar for the selling process itself. Of course, there's going to be some nuances of perhaps you don't want to be on the same call as your spouse or be in an in-person meeting. And so we can help navigate that to ensure that both you and your future ex will be treated fairly. Both parties are treated equally to make sure that we can all get to the common goal of selling the home.
That's a great point, and technology today makes it so much easier for us to keep everyone in the loop in a very timely manner. It's wonderful when everything is amicable and we can all talk freely, but we have had some situations where people prefer to meet separately. A lot of signatures, almost all the signatures really, can be done digitally. Closings can be done separately. They can even be done remotely when you're a seller. So if someone has moved out of the area, it's very easy for us to have the title company do a remote settlement, and then proceeds are always wired. So it is pretty easy on the seller side logistically that if it's more comfortable for everyone to be apart, we can certainly manage that process and communicate by email and making sure everybody gets all the information at the same time. We've successfully managed that for years now. We'd love for people to reach out if you have questions, something we didn't talk about today. We'd love to have a confidential conversation, make sure we get your questions answered. It's always better to pull us into the loop as early in the process as possible so that we can give you some guidance, give you some tips, things you should be thinking about, conversations that you need to have so that we can hit the ground running.
Not all real estate agents are well versed in divorce situations and divorce sales. So finding an agent, just like our team, that is well versed in that and different scenarios and how to accomplish the same goal is really critical, because it's not the same as selling a traditional home. It's a little bit different. There's more nuances, and it just takes a little bit more strategy logistically and otherwise just to make sure that everyone can get to settlement happy.